few of the videos that you creative directed. One of them having to do with the ocean and how surfing in the ocean and how it's great, right? Even seeing in the ocean in the storm looks visually
Yeah.
stunning, but you don't want to be in there, right? And I thought that was just such a perfect analogy. And with
Mhm.
the snow dogs, we were talking off stage about that as well. What aside from that, was that a time when you got injured when you said you shaking your fists at God? But aside from that, are there any other personal storms that
Yeah.
almost destroyed your faith or really challenged your faith? Welcome to the Revo Report. We're inspiring faith with reason and reason with faith.
Honestly, I can say there's never been an instance in my life where I felt, man, God, I'm done. I'm done with you. But I've definitely had moments where I grew complacent in my walk with the Lord. Wasn't really pressing in, wasn't really
Okay.
pursuing. I remember when I was in, I want to say my third or fourth year of university, I became very bitter towards the church and what I'd been seeing.
Mm,
And so much so that I quite genuinely was like, man, I love Jesus, but I'm sick of his church, sick of his people. Like, I was cracking. Here's one thing: I have no issues with Christian comedians, no issue.
mhm.
But I know full well what it's like to crack jokes about the church, knowing that I actually believe that.
Right.
It's just I've masked it in comedy. And so that's what I would
Mm,
do, is I'd be constantly making fun of the church and amongst Christians, okay?
mhm.
Someone would do something like they'd say something, I'd be like, "Oh man, Christians, am I right?" And they're like looking at me because they know I'm a Christian. Oh, yeah, I guess so. But so there was never a moment where I was like, "Lord, I'm done with you." But I was
Mhm.
definitely I had time and time again, I've had moments where I'm like, "Man, I'm done with the church because
Mm.
what I'm seeing is not what I'm reading." Like, how did we get so far
Right.
from the book of Acts? How are we so caught up in legalism that we're not looking at how Jesus applied the law, how Jesus
Mhm.
applied these things that we're so hard on? And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not seeing it. And it really was through who was my girlfriend at the time and is now my wife. I remember having a frustration with her one day, and she said, not her, but I was sharing my frustration. And she said, "You talk about the church like you're not part of it." And it stopped me in my tracks. I was like, well, no, I'm part of it. She's like, I don't know. It sounds like you're not. And the way you talk
Whoa.
about the bride of Christ is as if you're not part of the bride of Christ. And that the Lord, it wasn't as written like Saul's falling off, being blinded moment. And now he has to walk for 3 days. And then but really spiritually, that
Mhm.
was, I realized, oh my gosh, I have been blinded by my own frustrations, and I actually need discipleship because these things
Wow.
I'm feeling, if not pointed to another leader who can point in, who has a similar burden, but knows how to walk in a grace and a mercy that the Lord has called us to, unless I have that
Wow.
leader, I'm actually going to become like a double agent kind of in the church,
Right.
sowing
Wow.
discord. And so that's really where I wrestled for sure.
Wow. I wonder if that's similar to a lot of people who grew up in the church who really want to grow in their walk with God, but then become disillusioned with all of the faults of the church. Right.
Yeah.
And I have a very similar story where I grew up in the church, and there's at one point I thought, what is this? It seems so hypocritical. The church is so
Mhm.
judgmental. The church is, how come they're gossiping all the time about each other
Yeah.
in the guise of prayer request, etc. And unfortunately, I was the target of a lot of that because I had backslid for a long time. I was the black sheep,
Mm.
and so a lot of it was about me, and
Sure.
I hated it, and I turned my back from the church for a while as well. But when was that turning point for you? Because growing up in the church, I'm sure you had access to other pastors who you could express your own father, maybe that you could talk about. Hey, how come we're doing it this way and not that? Did you have that opportunity to share it with other leaders at the time? Was it just dismissed? And what is the difference between then and now where you're at now professionally?
I'll say this, hindsight is 2020 for a reason.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I had access because I didn't know that the questions I was asking weren't new ones. I'll say as a young man, I think everyone wrestles with pride in one way or another. But
Yeah.
pride for me kept me from going to people who could offer pushback because I didn't
Mm,
actually seek them out. It wasn't even like I didn't want it. So I'll say in 20 from 2012 to about 20, let me get my timeline right here. It's from 2009 to 2011, I spent time at Nippwin Bible College. This is a small little
Mm.
Bible college in Northern Saskatchewan. This is me coming off the back of California.
Okay.
Taking it back a little bit. When I was in California, I made the decision I wasn't going to go back. It was a tough decision, very hard decision. The Lord said, "You're going to Bible college." And so I decided to go to Bible college that my best friend was at. And while I was there, these conversations started coming up. And I realized that one, the Lord does have me thinking very differently according to my call, according to where
Mm.
He's going to place me. Didn't know what that was going to be or where it was going to be. Remember, music was just like an outlet right now. I didn't think I could actually do anything with it. I loved Lecrae. I loved the Ambassador. I loved Christian hip hop, but I never
Mhm.
once for a minute thought, oh, you could go and have a legitimate career. It was it was those dorm room conversations, man, where I'd be sitting with some of my best friends, like these good Mennonite boys from central Canada and Manitoba, from these small towns. And we're from totally different demographics, right?
Yeah.
Totally different. And we're having the same conversation. I'm realizing that they're having this same challenge and burden, but just looks
Mm.
differently.
Right.
It just looks differently, right? Given for their demographic where they were from, they were seeing a lot of legalism, right?
Mhm.
They were, because the era that their parents were raised in, it was just, you just go to church. This is what you do. This is what our family does on Sunday, but no one's living it out. For me,
Mhm.
on the flip side, my church was in the inner city. So I'm seeing people struggling with real brokenness, real stuff. Like we're
Mhm.
talking, this lady came to church and she's struggling with her addiction. So she goes to the bathroom mid-service and is now overdosing. But
Wow.
she came to church. And
Yeah.
so this is what I'm seeing. And so when I'm sitting in these classes, no issue with Bible college, but
Yeah.
I'm sitting in these classes and I'm saying, why isn't what we're learning translating outside these walls? Because when I go back home, this is what I'm walking into, right?
Right.
And so if we're not living this out, my heart was just breaking. But it was
Mm.
really those conversations that had the Lord say, Troy, I've got something bigger for you. These are not just conversations. This was what I'd like to say were my early stages of apologetics that I did not know that the Lord was preparing me for, because
Mm.
conversations I'm having are apologetics conversations. Check this out.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in Bible college and I'm reading through the letters of Paul, and I'm reading a lot of Paul. And then I eventually work my way I open my book and I'm reading through First Peter. No idea how I got there. And I start
Mhm.
reading First Peter 3:15. Always be ready for anyone who gives an answer to anyone who may ask you the reason for the faith that is within you. Period. Do so with gentleness and respect. I was like, this is the greatest verse I've never heard of. Why did no one read this to me? What is this? It became like people say, this is my life verse. It was
Mhm.
First Peter 3:15 and Proverbs 16:9. In his heart a man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. Fast forward to 2020 when Apologetics Canada comes knocking at my door saying we need a creative director. I say, what are apologetics? I don't even know what these are. Keep in mind, I've done now 4 years of Bible college. I've never heard the word apologetics.
Mhm.
Never heard it. They're like, in First Peter 3:15, we call this the Apologetics Creed. I said, excuse me?
It's my life verse.
This is my life verse. And if you speak to Andy, our president, he was like, Troy, you've
Yeah.
been doing apologetics. I hear it in your music. I'm like,
Mm.
what was this? And so I say this turn for me was one, having conversations with like-minded believers. Then the second thing was allowing the Lord to lead me to people that could actively disciple me. Actively
Mm.
disciple me. So that's the church that I'm now a part of, my pastors and my elders in
Yeah.
my church are actively discipling me. And I will swear down that discipleship is imperative to the local body. I don't care who you are or how far along you are in your faith, how seasoned you are. You are not speaking to someone more seasoned than you. You are missing out. And then the second thing I'll say is, even in my place of work, while Andy is my boss, he is actively discipling me as well,
Mm.
right? He's discipling me in a different format in the Christian marketplace, how to
Right.
navigate a conference, how to be thoughtful, how to breathe, how to pray through the process of creating a conference, all of
Mm.
those things. And so really
Right.
that's been my turning point time and time again, is different measures of discipleship and then now discipling others.